Welcome to the Notion of Life series, in which we are building the ultimate Notion system that helps us get more result with less effort. In the last video, we had a look at the circle of growth, which is the foundational model that is underlying the Notion of Life system that helps us bring into alignment who we are with what we do. In today's video, we are going to explore the action tracker, which is actually the first element inside of Notion that we are going to build. Every moment, life is posing us a question, and the way we respond is through our actions. Through our actions, we determine the direction that we are taking in our lives. Now, part of that is knowing where do we want to go, which is why we have this whole inside part of the circle of growth. But then when we know where we want to go, we need to take action to actually go there. Actions are the building blocks for our long-term vision. And that is why we have this future flow. We translate our insights into goals, into projects, all the way down into these actions, and then we execute on these actions, right? Every action that we take is a vote for the person that we want to be. And by having this process, by having this alignment, we can also have the confidence that when I'm working on something today, that is contributing to this person that I want to be. In the moment, things might seem irrelevant. You might wonder to yourself, why am I doing this? The mundaneness of life might kick in. But by having this alignment, you know that the thing I'm doing right now is contributing to this long-term vision. And I might not see that at this moment, but I know it's happening because I thought about this and I structured it in that way. And just like the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, so the ambition of a lifetime starts with a single action. And at the end of this video, you will have an action tracker that you can use to take those steps consistently. Now, I'd like to start with a little story, but if you're just here for the Notion stuff, feel free to use the timestamps in the description to fast forward. Once upon a time, there was a master craftsman, and this master craftsman made the most beautiful chessboard the world had ever seen. And the king of the country really wanted to buy this chessboard. So he went up to the craftsman and he said, "I will buy this chessboard for any price you name." So the craftsman thought for a moment, and he said to the king, "I would like 1 grain of rice for the first square of the chessboard, and then 2 grains of rice for the second, and 4 for the third, and 8 for the fourth. And I want you to keep doubling that all the way till the end of the chessboard." The king was laughing to himself and thinking, that is such a small price for such a beautiful piece of work. This man is willing to sell me this amazing chessboard for just a few grains of rice? So the king starts to count out the grains of rice, and as he is progressing, his laugh slowly starts to disappear, until he gets to the last square and he realizes, I have just given away more rice than the entire kingdom owns. And that, my friends, is the power of compound interest, making little gains every single day that in and of themselves might not seem like a lot, but as we stack them on top of each other, they create exponential growth. If we make just 1% of progress every single day, within 3 months, we have already doubled our capacity. Let that just sink in for a moment. 1% of progress each day, doubling your capacity in 3 months. But to get this compounding effect, we have to take action. We need to take consistent action every single day, and preferably we take consistent action towards that person we want to become, right? In 10 years, I want to be there, and that might seem very far away, but by taking consistent action every day, getting 1%, 1%, 1%, we get this exponential growth, and the sky is the limit, right? I really like this quote by Tony Robbins that most people overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in a decade. Just imagine what a decade of your life would look like with 1% every single day. And don't even imagine it. Grab out your calculator and just plot that on a graph, and you will see that the growth is insane. And that is why we are building this action tracker in today's video. Now, before we continue, I'd like to invite you to take a moment and answer the following question. How are you currently organizing your actions? And how is that working out for you? Just think on that for a moment and then we'll continue. All right, some practical information before we get started. As always, you can find the timestamps down below and jump ahead to the section of the video that is interesting to you. You can also increase the playback speed if you think I'm not already talking fast enough. And of course, all the links, assets, and products are mentioned in the description down below. So do check them out if you want to use them. All right, let's get into it. Let's start with a little summary up front. The key goal of the action tracker is to help us execute on the right task at the right time. Now, we do this by 4 different steps. We capture, clarify, process, and execute. In the capturing part, we capture any incoming information. We make sure that we don't miss any information. Like David Allen once said, the mind is for having ideas, not for keeping them. So whenever something comes up, we want to capture it as soon as possible. Then later on, we clarify. We want to take the information that we captured and make sure we've assigned it the proper context, given it a proper name, a proper priority. And then after that, we want to process it. We want to put it into the right part of our system, link it to the proper project that it is related to. And then the 4th step is either executing or deleting. We either do the task or we delete the task. And like that, we have a continuous flow for all of our actions, and the action tracker is the tool that helps us to do this. By structuring our actions in this way, we gain confidence in what we do, we get clarity, and we create much more value. So in this video, the first thing we are going to look at is the end product, the action tracker as it is inside of a Notion of Life. And specifically, we are going to take a look at the daily actions view and at the action calendar view. After having a look at that action tracker, we are going to build an action tracker from scratch. Now, we're not doing this for all the elements in this system, but since we're still getting used to Notion, today we are building the action tracker from scratch. And then at the end of the video, there's a little bonus, but you have to stick around to see what that is. All right, enough preamble, let's dive into Notion. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to do is have a look at the finished action tracker. So let's go into this database collection zone. And as we explored in one of the previous videos, this is the place where all of our databases live. And over here in the execution and planning phase, you can see the action tracker. So I'm just going to open that up. I'm going to show you the end result. Don't feel overwhelmed. We are going to cover all of these things later in depth. But first, I just want to show you briefly what it is that we are actually going to build. So we'll just open this one up. And over here, the first view that you can see, and you can always recognize a view by these little tabs in the top, right? So this is a view, that is a view, that is a view. And these are just different ways of showing the data inside of this database. So this first view that we have over here are all the action items that we have planned for today. And that's why it's called the daily actions view. So in here, we have all the action items that have an action date for today. And today is the 17th of September. So over here, you can see all of them have that action date. And were I to change one of these dates to a different day, it will automatically disappear from this view. Now, I'm going to show you how this works in a little bit, but first I want to cover the different properties that we are using for the action tracker. So of course we need a name for each of our action items. Now, my tip here would be is when you are creating an action or when you are processing an action that you've captured earlier, to make sure that it has a name that is concise and clear. So we want to write down something that when we read that action, it's actually clear what we want to do. So if I would only write down clean over here, it's like clean what? So instead we might want to write down clean the kitchen, right? We want to make it clear what this action relates to. Okay, so the next property that we have over here is whether this action is done or not. And this is pretty standard. We're just going through our action list, and as we're ticking off these action items, we can simply tick that box and they will automatically disappear. All right, I could just bring these back for now. Then over here we have the priority that we assign to our different action items. And there is a bunch of different priorities that we have over here. We can use the urgent tag for anything that needs to happen straight away. It will always be on the top. Urgent needs to happen right here, right now. Then we have quick tasks, which are things that we can do in under 5 minutes. So sometimes there's just a bunch of these quick actions that you want to do. We can bundle these together and then you can easily tick them off at the beginning of your day, right? Get that momentum going, get some of those wins. Then we have the big win. And this is the one action item, the one task that when we complete it, the day has been won. Life is hectic, right? We create this perfect action list, but so often everything changes and we don't actually manage to finish our entire to-do list. And that's why we have this big win. It's that one task that when we complete it, at the end of the day, we can say to ourselves, I made progress towards that goal. And it's okay that I didn't hit every single action item. I did hit this one. So that is the big win, the one thing we really want to get done on that day. Then we have the second, third, fourth, and fifth priority. This is just super standard. And the reason that there is only 5 is because we almost never have more energy, time, and space to do more than 5 of these action items. So if you feel like you need more, you can add more. But my advice would be 5 max. And then at the bottom here, we have messages, which are basically things like WhatsApp messages, emails. And the reason they have the separate tag is so that you can bunch them together and you can just crack out all these messages in one go. Now, there is many different priority systems, right? You have the most important things system, you have the 1-3-5 system. This is just a system that I chose to go with, but you can modify this to your personal need, right? So this is just a suggestion on how to prioritize your tasks, but there's many different ways to do it. Next up, we have the parent action. I'm not going to explain this right now, but we're using this at some point to filter our actions and group them together. Then we have the action date, and this is the date on which we want to do an action, on which we try to do an action, but it's not a deadline. I personally don't like the word deadline. I mean, the word dead is literally in there. It's very stress-inducing. It's very tensing. I'd much rather have a date on which I aim to do a specific task, but if I don't complete it on that date, that is perfectly fine. There's always so much happening and we have to be gentle with ourselves, right? We have to be gentle and make sure that we are doing the long-term and consistent work rather than the short-term burst and then burning ourselves out in the process. But if there is a task that does have a deadline, we have the final date over here. And then over here we can assign a date, which is basically saying this really needs to be done before the 21st. Now, I'm still going to try to do it on the 17th, but it really needs to be done on the 21st. I rarely use this tag as I don't like to have deadlines, but if you have a profession or if you have a situation in which this is needed, you can use that final date property over here. Then next up, we have the status property, which we can use in some rare occasions. We have the someday, the waiting on, and the parent. The someday tag we can use for tasks that we might want to do someday, but currently they just don't really fit into our lives. So we can just put them in there and we will revisit these during our weekly reviews. But just so you know, you stored them away in a special list with all the action items that we might want to do someday. Then the next one is waiting on, which is a tag we can assign when we need to get a response from someone else. Now I'm waiting on getting that feedback. And then at the end of the week, we can once again check in. Is there still things I need to get a reply on? And we can use it in that manner. And then the last one is a parent. But once again, I'm not going to explain that right now because that is a little more complicated. Then the last property we have over here is the project tracker relation. Now, if you watched my previous videos, you will know that we can relate databases to each other, and our action tracker and our project tracker are married to each other in this way. And that allows us to assign a specific action to a specific project, and also the other way around, to assign a specific project to a specific action. So over here you can see which project is this action item related to. So this one over here, record the daily review video, is related to this project, a Notion of Life, sales and marketing. So over here in a quick overview, we can see, hey, this action item is related to that project. And if we want from here, we could also go into that project and have that entire workspace at our disposal. All right, well, previous page, which is command left bracket. Do that one more time. So that is the daily actions view. Now, I'm also going to show you which filters we have applied to make it so that we can only see the action items that are due for today. So if I go in here to the filter, you can see that the action date is set to today. So that means it's only going to show us action items that are due for today. And this is a dynamic filter. So because it says today, it automatically checks what is the date of today, and then it changes the filter to that specific date. And today is the 17th of September, that's why it's showing it over here, but tomorrow it's going to show the 18th. You could also do this manually, but obviously we don't want to do that because that doesn't make sense. We would have to change this filter every single day. So that's why we're using this dynamic today filter. The next filter that we have applied is that we only want to see action items that have not been checked yet, right? That's why we have this done is unchecked over here, which means when we check them, obviously they automatically disappear. And lastly, we want the status to be empty. Almost all of our action items have an empty status because they're just regular action items. But let's say we do have that waiting on action, we do want it to disappear from our list. So we just press over there, or we can say someday, and it automatically disappears from our list. And then the last thing we're going to look at is the priority over here that is sorted by ascending, meaning we see this urgent one on the top and the message one on the bottom. If we were to reverse that into descending, well, as you can see, it goes upside down. Then the next thing I want to show you is the action date calendar. And this is a view that we use to easily create new action lists. So I'm going to go in here into all of the views that we have here. Once again, don't be overwhelmed. We'll all cover these in due time, but I'm just going to open up this action date calendar over here. And what you can see is that we now have all of our action items, but they're displayed in this calendar. And the cool thing about this is that we can easily swap and drag around action items to make new lists. And we could also grab multiple in one go. And like that, we could start creating lists for tomorrow, for the week ahead, and we have an easy way of organizing all of our tasks. Now, any change that we make in this calendar also will be reflected in the different views. That's what we discussed in the last videos, right? When we create a new view of a database, the data is all still the same. The content of that database doesn't change, but it's just the way that we perceive it that changes. So right here, it's a table view, and it's a table view of our daily actions. But then over here, it's that calendar view. And if we were to just, once again, recreate that over here, boom. We automatically have that action list that we can use. Now, later on, we're going to explore all these properties and filters. I just wanted to show that to you real quick. Now, we also have the master table as we have with all of our databases. And this one's always really overwhelming because it's unstructured. It's just all the data that lives in a specific database. Now, this is the empty Notion of Life system, so it's not that full, but as you are using this, this list just keeps growing and growing and growing. In this database, you can see all of the action items that you have ever tracked inside a Notion of Life. And over here, you can see all the information. There's some extra properties, which we're also going to discuss later on in this series. And yeah, this is where all our action information lives. Now we have a whole bunch of views in here. We have the quick capture view, which allows us to quickly capture new action items. We have a bunch of different views for in the execution zone, including the daily actions that we just covered, including a special view in which we can organize our action items by energy level, which will come as a bonus at the end of this video. We have a mobile view. We have all these different views for inside of other templates. And yeah, that's a lot of different things we're going to be building, but today we are sticking to the basics. And in the spirit of sticking to the basics, we are going to build this action tracker from scratch. Now, a quick note, we are not going to build all the databases in this system from scratch, but since we just got started, we are going to do this one all the way from zero. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is create a brand new database. And of course, we are going to do that inside of our database collection zone, because this is where all of our databases live. I'm going to create a new page. I'm going to name that Action Tracker Tutorial. And then over here, I'm going to choose table, meaning that I want to turn this page into a database and I want to have the table view. Now it's going to ask me, do I want to use an existing data source? And I'm going to say nope, because I want to create this brand new database. And just like that, we have a bare bones database. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is change this one to action name, because this is where we are going to write down our actions. Now, the second property that we are going to create is the checkbox. So I'm going to click on this property over here. I'm going to say edit property, and then I'm going to change this into the type checkbox. And just automatically we get that checkbox over here. And I'm going to call it done, question mark. And the cool thing about the checkbox property is that you can actually drag this one all the way in. So if you want to have that clean view, you could even remove that title and just have it like that. Okay, then the third one that we want to create is the priority. So I'm going to once again create a property by clicking on this plus over here. I'm going to go down into this list and I am going to select the select property. And the select property is where we can assign these different tags to a specific database entry. Now you can also do the multi-select if you want to be able to assign multiple tags to an entry, but for now we only need one. And we're going to call this one priority because this is where we are tracking our priority. So I'm going to open this one up over here. I'm going to say big win. That's going to be the first one. And as you saw earlier, we had a little flame emoji in front of this one. The way you can do that on Mac is by doing Control Command Spacebar, and on Windows it's the window key and the period. So I'm going to open that one up, grab the fire emoji, and boom, we got the big win. Then I'm going to create second priority, third priority. Now I won't do all five, we'll do messages, and maybe we'll do urgent. Now let's say we want to change this name because we forgot to add the exclamation mark. I will go in there to these three dots at the beginning. I'm just going to say exclamation because it's urgent. And I also want to change the color. I want to change the color to red. I want the big win to be orange, this one to be yellow, and maybe this one to be blue, and then the messages, maybe I want that to be gray. And I can just drag these around to get the nice priority list. And just like that, we created our priorities. So now anytime we want to assign something, we can simply click here on these tags to automatically assign that to this specific property. Okay, the next property that we then want to create is the action date, which is when we want to do this action. So I'm going to go once again over here, create a new property. I'm going to select the date property, and all we have to do is call it action date. And just like that, we have our action date. Then we are going to duplicate this property and call the other one the final date, which is that deadline that we might have for an action item. And then the last thing that we want to add is that status. And once again, we're grabbing this select property. We're going to call it status. And we're just going to add the someday waiting on. Okay, so just like that, we've built a very simple action tracker. Now, this one over here is currently the master table. So I'm going to rename this view over here, and I'm going to call it master table. Now, the next thing that we want to do is create a view in which we only see the action items that are due for today. So what I'm going to do is just duplicate a few of these actions so we have a bigger list. And I'm just going to grab a few and say, okay, these are September 17th. And by dragging down like this, we can automatically assign it to all the other action items. And then these ones are all going to be September 18th. And once again, drag it down. Now, at this point, you might be wondering, why are these cells getting so super big? And that is because we have the wrap turned off. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to say, edit this view. I'm going to go into the layout and I'm going to unwrap all of these columns, and then boom, just like that. Now, any text that is overflowing, which means any text that is larger than the cell, is not going to go down, but it's just going to hide itself away. Okay, so just like that, we have now a very bare bones action items. And what I want to do is go over here and create a new view of this database. Now, whenever we create a new view for a database, we always want to do this in the original database. And that's why we have all of these databases in this central place, because we want to create these new views in this database. And in a little bit, we are going to explore why, but it's good to know that when creating new views, we want to do it in the original. So I'm going to go in here, create this new view, and it's asking me which one of these layouts do you want. Now, since we are building the daily actions, we want to have that simple table. So I'm just going to leave that on table, and we're going to call this one daily actions. Now, if you've watched the previous videos, you might remember that one of the core principles that we do when designing our systems is consistency. We want to be consistent in the styles that we are using. And now, since the action tracker is denoted by this fire emoji, we always want to put that fire emoji at the beginning of any given view. So I'm going to open that one up. I'm going to give it the fire emoji. And just like that, I'm going to say done. Now I'm also going to give the database itself the fire emoji because we haven't done that yet. And then we are also going to add the cover to this database. So over here we can say add cover just to make it a bit clearer. We go into the change cover, upload a file. Now all of these files are linked in the description down below. So if you want to use this particular cover, you can grab it down there for free. I'm just going to search in my computer, open up that cover, and then over here, boom, we have a beautiful action tracker cover just to make it very clear which database we're in. So now we have that fire emoji to denote this is the action tracker tutorial. We have that database cover over here. Lastly, in the master table, we will also put this fire emoji, right? So we can just put that in there, boom. And that's how we create our views. So back to this daily actions view. Currently, this is a one-on-one duplication of this previous view, right? Okay, some are just ordered slightly different, but it's the same view. If you remember the beginning, we want this particular view to only show us the action items that are due for today. So what we are going to do is create some filters. And a filter is just really a way to say, I only want to see this specific piece of data from this database. So I'm going in here, I'm going to go to the action date, and I want to say, I only want to see action items that have an action date, which is set to today. Boom. So start date is today, and start date is basically the beginning of a date. We could also create an end date if we want to have actions that have both a start and an end, but for now that's not relevant. So we just have the start date, and that start date is set to today. And as you can see, all these actions that were due for September 18th have automatically disappeared, right? That's what this filter does. If we were to say, only show me action items that have a start date of 18, it's going to show 18. If it's 19, it's going to show 19, right? But we want to have it for today. We want to have that dynamic filter going on. The next filter that we want is to say, I only want to see action items that aren't done yet. So we say done is unchecked, right? So that means we only see the ones that are unchecked. If I were to check these right now, they automatically disappear. The other way around, if we said, hey, I only want to see action items that are already done, we would say checked. And as you can see, we can only see the action items that are already done. All right, so I'm just going to reverse that. We're going to say unchecked. Next, we are going to add the status is empty filter because these waiting on actions, we don't actually want to see them in our daily action view. So over here, I'm going to say status, And either you could say, I want to see all the someday ones, I want to see the waiting on ones, but what we are going to say is that the status needs to be empty. And over here we can say status is empty. So it's only going to show us the action items in which the status is empty. Now at this point you might be wondering, what the hell is this orange box over here that says save for everyone? This is only relevant if you are using Notion as a team or if you're sharing your databases with each other. Because what's happening right now is we're making changes to this view, but if someone else were to open this page and open this database and go into this view, they would not see these changes. They would only see it when we press save for everyone. So I'm just always pressing that because I don't want to see the orange box. But if you're using Notion for personal work, it doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to say save for everyone over here. Then the last thing that we want to do is organize our tasks by priority, right? Because right now they could just be all mumbled. They don't automatically organize themselves. And that is what we want to do. We want as many things as possible to happen automatically, right? So we're setting this whole system up. That is the investment we're making. But once things work, we want to put in the least amount of effort necessary. So I'm going to go over here and say, sort these action items by their priority. And just like that, boom, we have them all sorted by their priority. We say the priority is ascending, meaning it goes from top to bottom. Okay, so let's go back into this master table. Suppose we would change a few more into 17th, so they're due for today. Now, all of them are going to show up here, and we could say third priority and messages, and one is urgent, and just like that. Beautiful little daily actions view. Now, the daily action view is the most used view in the system. If I go back into this collection zone, I'm opening up the original action tracker that is inside of the Notion of Life system. You know, we have all these different views. We go into this daily action view, and once again, just as a reminder, you can see all of these have that little flame emoji. And the reason we do that is because when we go, for example, into our execution zone, which is where all the databases live that we need for daily execution, we can see over here that we have that exact daily actions view. This is the exact same view that we just had in that original database. And once again, by using this emoji, I can easily see, this is the action tracker database. This is also the action tracker database. This is also the action tracker database. That right there, the little sun, is the daily review database. And like this, I can easily recognize which database I am looking at. Now, let's say, for example, that we want to add that daily action view that we just created to our execution zone. We can do that by going down here. Actually, we should do it up here, but I'm first going to show you how to do it down here. Say linked view of a database, right? So we want to grab a database, we want to link a view, and then it will ask us once again, which data source do you want to use? And we want to use the action tracker tutorial. We want to grab that view from the database we just created and display it over here. And this is sort of like a clone. It's sort of like a linked copy. So we can see it over here, but any changes we make here are also changed in different parts of the system. So I'm going to grab this action tracker tutorial, and now over here, it allows me to choose an existing view. And remember that earlier I said we always want to create views in the original database. The reason we do that is because then it allows us to copy those views. If I were to create a new view in here, if I were to make changes in this view, it does not allow me to copy it like that all throughout the system. So that's why we grab the original database, right? So as another example, if I were to grab the action tracker, the complete one that is in the Notion of Life system, you can see over here, I can easily copy in any of these views that I created in the original database. Okay, so I'm just going to delete that one because we don't need that right now. And ta-da! Over here we have our daily actions. And I like to hide these titles because I like to keep things as minimal as possible, which is why we have this little title over here. I'm just going to hide this database title, and boom, we have our daily actions in our execution zone. Now, of course, we don't want to have two databases on top of each other, so I'll just delete this one. And actually, I could just say over here in this stack of views that we have, I want to have the one we just created. And just like that, we have our daily actions view and our daily action database, and we can just use that from our execution zone. So then the next view that we want to create is the calendar view. So once again, we are going to go back into this database collection zone. We're going to open up our action tracker tutorial. And over here, we want to create a brand new view. Now I'm going to go into this master table and untag some of these action items. And once again, over here, we are going to say, create a new view. Now, this time we are going to pick a different layout. We want to have the calendar layout, which displays our database as a calendar. So I'm going to click on the calendar. As you see, it automatically changes that, right? We could also do the list or the gallery or the timeline, but for now we're doing the calendar, and we're going to say, show this calendar by action date. We want to see each of these action items based on their action date, so not on the final date, which would mean they all disappear. So we're going to say action date, show calendar as month, and open page as center peak. That is fine for now. So I'm going to say, give it the name over here. First, we're going to add that fire emoji like we do, and we're just going to call this the one, the calendar view. Boom. Just like that, we created a calendar view, and we have all of our action items in this calendar. But as you see, we are missing something. The first thing that we're missing is that we don't see any priorities. So what we want to do is we go into this 3 dots over here, edit the view layout. We click on that. We're going into properties, and as you can see already over here, it says 0 properties have been shown, and we want it to show the priority property. So if I click on this little eyeball over here, boom, just like that, we see the priority. We could also say show action date. We could also say show done checkbox, but once again, I like to keep things to a minimum. So we just hide this done checkbox. We hide this action date because, you know, the date is already pretty clear from the number over there. We just want to see that priority. Now, the second thing that we're missing is that it doesn't automatically organize itself. So what we want to do is we want to go over here and say, sort it by priority. And it's priority ascending. And now, as you can see, they are ascending by priority. Now, the last thing that we need to do is that we only want to see actions that haven't been done yet. Now, even though we can't see the checkboxes over here, the checkboxes are still assigned to these specific entries, right? If we open up any of these pages, you can see they still have that checkbox, and this one might even be checked. And this one might also even be checked, right? So they still have that checkbox, we just don't see it. So now we are going to say, create a filter to only show us action items that are unchecked. And just like that, boom, we only see action items that are unchecked. And then in here, we can easily drag around these tasks and create different action lists by going in there and assigning these different priorities. And just like that, we created a super duper basic action date calendar. Now, this action date calendar lives in the planning zone because the planning zone is everything related to future planning. So if I were to go in here, you can see we have the action date calendar, and all of these, we can just drag them around just like we created in our action tracker tutorial. So quick recap of what we just did. We created a brand new database inside of our database collection zone called the action tracker tutorial. Inside of this database, we made this master table with the properties, action name, the done checkbox, the priority, our action and final date, and the status. Then we created this daily action view that is only showing us all the action items that are due for today. We created this calendar view, which allows us to easily create plannings and drag around tasks. And then we linked them to their respective zones where the daily action lives inside of this execution zone right over here. And the calendar lives in this planning zone. Now, a quick side note to make is that this calendar doesn't just live in the action zone, and the daily actions also doesn't just live in the execution zone. They also both live in the daily review. Now, we are going to explore the daily review in the next video, but I'm just going to give you a very brief sneak peek to see how that works. So over here, we have our daily review. When we create a review over here, there's a template that is generated, And then over here in this template, you can also see this today's actions view. It's slightly different, but over here you can see all the actions that are due for today. And in the bottom over here, we have that action calendar. So we can create this list because we don't want to go into these zones to keep the flow of our system going. We just want to go into the zones when we need the data on demand. But we have the review cycles, as mentioned in the previous video, to keep the process flowing so that we always check in with it on a daily basis. But that's something we are going to explore more in depth in a future video. Just want to show you that real quick. If this video is valuable to you, then please support me by liking and subscribing down below. It really does help. Okay, so that brings us to a little bonus view that we are going to create. When I was building this product, I was testing it with a group of users, and one of them said to me, I don't want to organize my actions by date. That feels much too constricted, that feels much too planned. I am more of an energy person. I just want to go with the flow and see how I feel in the moment. And that made me think, what if we create an energy view? So I'll just show you that one in the action tracker first. Over here, we have this view that says by energy level. And this is a special view where instead of using the action date, we classify our actions by how much energy we're feeling. And then in the moment, we can just check in with ourselves and open up one of these tabs, right? Maybe I feel high energy today. I open up this high energy tab and I can start working on these actions. Or maybe I'm feeling low energy today. So I can just open up this tab and start working on those actions. So this is a view for all the people that don't want to overly plan their actions by date, but would much rather check in with their energy levels. So I'm just going to quickly show you how you can create this view. So the first thing that we need to do is, of course, go back into that database. But then the second thing that we need to do once we're in that database is we need to add a new property. And that property is going to be called energy level because we want to assign an energy level to these different tasks. So we're going to go in here, create that property and call it energy level. Now I want to say high energy, medium energy, or low energy, right? And once again, you can color code these if you want. Red is going to be high energy, medium energy is going to be orange, low energy is going to be yellow. You could also add emojis. We can do the whole shebang. I'm not going to go too far into this right now, right? And maybe this one is writing an essay. That takes high energy. Maybe medium energy is doing groceries, and maybe low energy is sending some emails, right? These could be different sorts of tasks. Now, what we want to do is create a new view over here, which we are going to call by energy level. And for consistency and clarity's sake, of course, we are adding in this fire emoji because we are on fire. And then we're going to open that one up. And over here, we're going to say done. And what we want to do now is we want to group these action items by their energy level. So this is something that databases in Notion allows us to do. It allows us to group specific entries by a specific property. So we are going in here and say group these items. And what happens when we group these items is that we click it, and over here our actions are grouped by this property. We could also have grouped it by status, for example. We could also have grouped it by priority, for example. But in this case, we are grouping it by the energy level. And I actually want to see the high energy ones on top, the medium ones in the middle, and the low ones on the bottom. So we have to change this. Actually, it's already on manual, and we change them like that. Boom. And just like that, now we have grouped our action item. Now, what this does is that it groups any action item that has this property of energy level assigned into its proper class. So if I give this one high energy, boom, you see that just changed to 2. It changed to 3. And if I open it up, they are right in there. If I make this one medium energy, low energy, boom, medium energy. And just like that, now we have all these lists grouped by their energy level. Now, of course, we don't want to see this action date because we're now doing it on energy level. So what I do over here is I right click and I simply say hide this one in view. I also don't need to see the energy level because we already see that over here. So we're also going to hide that one over here. Of course, we don't want to see the action items that are already done. So I'm going to say action is unchecked. And then lastly, we want to sort by priority, right? Because we want to have that priority go from top to bottom. And just like that, beautiful, beautiful, short little action list, which is organized by energy level. And once again, you can add that one to your execution zone. And if you want, over here, you can have these action items sorted by their energy level. So that is just a little bonus view for all the die-hard geeks out there. So just one more time, very briefly, inside of our action tracker tutorial, we created this new property called energy level. We then created a new view, which we grouped by this energy level. And then just like that, we created this beautiful little view. Before we wrap up this video, I would love to hear how you currently approach your action items. Do you prioritize? Do you like using action dates? How do you structure everything? Let me know in the comments down below. It's really appreciated. Let's recap what we've discussed. The action tracker is the home to all of our actions. And through the circle of growth, we've aligned our insights with our action. Now, our action tracker helps us to actually execute on this vision. And it does this by helping us capture, clarify, process, and then execute or delete on certain actions. And a good way to think about this is that each action that we take is a vote for the person that we want to become. We then went into Notion and built the action tracker database from scratch. We built this database, we added all the properties, we created a daily actions view and an action calendar view, and then we also linked these to the proper zones, right? The proper phases from the circle of growth. And then at the end, we had a little bonus energy level view for those people that don't want to classify their actions by date, but prefer to do so by energy level. Now, just a reminder that there's many different ways of structuring your action items and that this is just a way of doing so. So feel free to tweak and adjust where necessary. Now, if you want to build a Notion of life all by yourself based on these videos, then all power to you. But if you'd prefer to use it straight away, then enrollment is currently open. And you can currently get a 20% early bird discount by using the link in the description down below. Now, I never want money to be the reason people cannot access my product. So if this system is too expensive for you right now, send me an email and we will arrange something. As mentioned in the introduction, all of the links, assets, and products can be found in the description down below. Next video, we are going to cover the daily review, which helps us structure our day-to-day lives and helps us use our energy more efficiently and wisely. And if you want to follow along with this whole series, I made a playlist on my YouTube channel and I can highly recommend starting at episode 1. For now, I want to thank you for watching, and remember, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. Take that step.